Procrastination as a method of self-preservation. Can all my escapists out there put a hand in the air? Wow! Just kidding. Get me out of here. So, procrastination. Why do we do it? The main purpose of procrastination is to keep ourselves safe by avoiding a certain task. By using escapism, by directing our attention elsewhere, we don't actually have to attend to the emotions associated with doing this task. It's not necessarily about the task itself, but the proximity that we will have to the emotions that it brings up. Because if it's in the distant future, you don't necessarily have to interact with it in that moment. You're kind of like, I'll get to it when I get to it. But if you are stepping up and facing it, it's kind of like those emotions will wash over you in this really overwhelming way. And you don't really have an option other than to feel them and to deal with it. If you have been in a state of fight or flight, freeze, fawn, whatever iteration of the survival response is that you've been experiencing, you may not feel like you have the capacity to engage with those emotions. So we become deeply avoidant. I am an extremely avoidant person. Escapism is my hobby. I may as well win a Nobel Prize for my contributions to escapism, okay? The purpose of this is to maintain a version of ourselves. And this can be a good version or a bad version, whatever. But in either case, we kind of hold them in this like static moment in time, maybe because we have an attachment towards them, or oppositely, we have a fear of becoming something other than that. For example, a lot of people talk about the fear of failure, but there's also the deeply rooted fear of success. This can be confusing because it's kind of like, well, isn't success a good thing? If I got everything that I wanted, shouldn't I want it? No. If you are emotionally and somatically primed to be terrified of being seen, of having the attention on you, of having people in your space, interacting with you, whatever, the prospect of success will lead you to self-sabotage because you feel unsafe. In this way, procrastinating the thing that could make you blow up on social media or become really famous or whatever it may be, that is a method of you keeping yourself safe. Self-preservation is not only holding a certain version of you static in time, it's also meant to protect yourself. You are trying so desperately to shield yourself from harm. We procrastinate because oftentimes we have become so burnt out by the overwhelming emotions or experiences that we're going through that we cannot tolerate anymore. What's actually happening is there is a deep exhaustion. There's a deep need that is not being fulfilled, whether it's feeling safe, loved, supported, etc. Procrastination also comes from the fear of being unworthy. It comes from the fear of abandonment. Let's say you have this project, okay, you have a film you want to direct, and it's something really intriguing and interesting to you, but you've never directed a film before. You have this idea that's just like nagging at your brain, but you keep putting it off. You're just like, okay, I'll do it later. I'll do it another time. I'll do it when I'm in the mood. Me. And what ends up happening is you never get to this. The reason isn't because you don't care. It's because it means so much to you that you have inextricably linked it to your self-worth. And the prospect of creating something and then failing means that that outcome will challenge your self-worth and unseat your sense of self. And it's terrifying, the prospect of, I put this piece of myself out there in whatever way, whether it's art, career, posting on social media, and then for it to not be received in the way that you want to. It's deeply painful. So to avoid this pain and this fear of feeling humiliated, rejected, abandoned, unworthy, unloved, whatever, you just keep putting it off. This also goes back to the fact that, one, we don't support ourselves, and two, we don't trust ourselves. You don't have the integrity with yourself to show up for yourself when you are not perfect. Me avoiding posting for a month because I was judging the way that I looked so much, and I was like, oh, well, I don't have anything to say, or whatever. As we continue to avoid these feelings, our threshold in tolerance levels for difficult challenges in our life goes down. There was this study done by these scientists, and basically they had these bugs and they put them in a jar, and the jar was like let's say this big, and I'm really paraphrasing this study here, but the fleas used to be able to jump, let's say up to here, but the jar was only here. And as time went on, the flea's jumping distance went lower and lower and lower. This is what ends up happening when we keep procrastinating and we keep shying away from putting ourselves out there in life, in whatever way that might be. Our tolerance levels become lower and lower, and thus we feel more and more mired to the spiral of anxiety, guilt, shame, fear. What's wrong with me? How could I do this? How could I put this off for so long? I'm so this, I'm so that. It just feeds itself. It's a beast eating its own tail. Take this from somebody who has been deeply isolated the last 5 years. It is really, really fucking hard to get out of it. It is not easy. But what I am going to tell you is there are things that you can do to start to build up your tolerance again. First of all, environment. Where are you right now? For example, if you do remote work and the space in which you work, you play, you rest are all the same, it's going to be very difficult for you to shift gears from relaxing and fucking off and watching TikToks and whatever to being this super focused, motivated, driven person. Shift your environment. Go somewhere that isn't the place that you always are, especially if that place often houses your emotional breakdowns. That's not the place that you want to be when you're trying to create a new life. Pay attention to the people that you surround yourself with. There's that saying, paraphrasing, but it's basically like you are the 5 closest people you surround yourself with, something like that. But that's really true. If you are a deeply isolated person, like myself at the moment, then you need to find people who lift you up. Find people who challenge you in a positive way. Because when we don't have something to push us to be better, use our resources, to trust ourselves, to take that leap over the metaphorical cliff into the unknown, then we just feel unsatisfied. I know for me, like not feeling challenged in my life has been a huge problem for me, especially since I graduated. Academia there was so much to learn and to expand your mind and all these things. And I used to think to myself, like, how are adults so stupid? And now I know how they're so stupid because they're not actively being educated unless they seek that out. So seek out whatever it is that feeds your hunger. It can be for creativity, to be challenged, to be connected, whatever it may be. But we have to find places and spaces that nurture this so we can kind of shift the paradigm, because avoidance becomes a much more appealing option when we think that we have nothing else than to either run away from that feeling or to face it. There's no kind of buffer. And in this case, the buffer is those other environments that lift you up, that fill your cup, that make you feel excited, that make you feel joyful, that make you feel curious. We have to intentionally go into these spaces, because if we are not putting ourselves there, no one's going to drag us there. You know what I mean? That's the good thing and the bad thing about being an adult is your autonomy levels are very different than when you were a child. And if you grew up in a very traumatizing household, you may not even know what to do with it, how to use it, how to exercise it. But this is an opportunity for you to do so. I guess controversially, I'm going to say something that people may not agree with. I don't think that you should take little steps if you really want to get out of procrastination, because what we end up doing is we start overthinking and then coming up with all of these narratives in our head that are like, oh, well, what if this goes wrong? Or, oh, well, actually, I'm busy. Or, oh, well, maybe I'll feel like it on a different day. No, you won't. You will not. Again, you're trying to protect yourself. So this is out of a place of love for yourself. But out of a place of love, you need to challenge yourself. I think honestly, throw yourself into something unexpected and kind of scary. Obviously, be safe and responsible. But I mean, let's say you've always wanted to dance, but you feel too embarrassed to go to a dance class. Sign up for a dance class next week. Don't put that off. Don't be like, when I look different, when I lose weight, when I have the right clothes, when I have the right friends. No, go right now. And the thing is it's not about all of these experiences being perfect. They may suck. You may feel like you made a fool of yourself. But what matters is you are building tolerance to feeling uncomfortable things. And that is what procrastination is trying to protect us from, those uncomfortable feelings. And the more that you can do this, it's kind of like leaping before you think. Calculated, of course, but so many of us have these narratives that play on loop in our head, and they end up informing everything that we do or don't do. We end up missing out on so much of life because we're so worried. When you're on your deathbed, do you really want to be like, I wish I had gone to that dance class when I was 23. I wish I had taken that risk. I wish I had traveled the world, whatever. It's so easy for us to think this way because we are stuck in the mundane. We're stuck in our own mind constantly. We're not really thinking about, at the end of my life, where am I going to be and what do I want? One thing that I felt like I lost a lot of in these last few years was courage. And that was the thing that I wanted the most. That was the thing I wanted to be. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to be this grand adventurer. And I felt like my life was so boring and mundane and meaningless and lonely. And I had no idea how to do that. Part of the courage is challenging yourself to go to a class or an event or go on a retreat or something when you don't necessarily feel ready. That is bravery. That is courage. It may not feel like it, but that's what it is. We are so caught up in our own heads that we don't know how to objectively look at ourselves. But when you take those things into account, all of that adds up. That is building your strength bucket, we can call it. It's like little drops, but soon it's going to be a full pail. Little steps are valid, but if you want to make real change, throw yourself off the metaphorical deep end. You're going to surprise yourself because you're going to realize, 1, I have way more tenacity and capability than I think. 2, you face the worst of it. We spend so much time building up our fear and terror of what if this happens? What if it goes this way? What if this person says something? And it eats us alive. But the thing is, when you actually face that thing, even if it was as horrible as you think it was, the only thing to do after that is to build from the ground up. I want to remind you that you are not a slave to your own life. I know it can feel that when you're stuck in this mundane, repetitive cycle of the same day and the same things. And in some ways, we've taken comfort in that mediocrity, in hiding, in staying stagnant because it's familiar. It feels safe. But that is not all your life is meant to be. You're not put on this earth to be somebody mediocre or average. And there's nothing wrong with just, doing things and being fine at it. But don't deny yourself excellence. Don't deny yourself the sweet nectar of joy, of pleasure, of feeling life at its fullest. That's what we deny ourselves when we procrastinate. The rush of jumping into something and fucking owning it is the best feeling ever. It's also a lesson for if you jump into something and you make a fool of yourself, you're not actually making a fool of yourself. But the more that you do this, the more you are building your trust in yourself to say, if things don't go to plan, if I have to do something, off the cuff, you are showing yourself, hey, look at my capabilities. Let me show you what I'm made of. Instead of denying yourself the chance to even try because you're afraid that you are not going to prove that you're worthy enough. We have to come into things knowing that our worthiness is not in question. And the way that you can build that belief is by putting yourself in situations just a little bit at a time that you would normally avoid to show yourself, I've got this. And even if I don't have it, I'll figure out a way. I'm resourceful. I'm capable. I'm smart. And you are certainly not alone. That's, I think, the biggest feeling that so many of us harbor is we don't have support. Maybe you don't have people in person. I really don't. But there are people and communities online that care about you. Go out into your city and go to, a meetup for something you like D&D. Go to Toastmasters, I don't know. Whatever. I want to challenge you to show yourself what you're made of. If you want to be a hero, you need a challenge. So challenge yourself and do something you're afraid of. Comment below, tell me what it is. I would love to hear. For me, this was getting back into dance classes. And I love dancing. It's literally everything to me. I'm not trained or something like that. But dance is such a huge part of my soul. And I made a commitment to myself back in October that I was going to join a dance class. And I started learning belly dancing. So that is an act of courage for me. Instead of continuing to put off showing myself to the world, this channel in and of itself is an act of breaking procrastination, because I procrastinated so long on letting myself be seen and perceived by others out of trauma, out of fear, out of bullying, whatever it was. But I have something to say, and so do you. So go say it.